Sukhi Wahiwala, how are you?
Hello, everybody. Very well, thank you. So I'm just adjusting the camera. If you give me 30 seconds.
Great. You look amazing, by the way. um,
You've just took the line
so,
straight out of my mouth. That was what I was going to say to say about yourself there, Geeta.
thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, for those of you who don't know Sukhi, Sukhi is an acclaimed and very, very successful businessman, multi-millionaire. Um, not, and I say that because he has an amazing, amazing soul as well. And he's got a beautiful story to share, and not just a story, but he also has some really key things to share with people regarding you know being wealthy is great, but it's not everything, right? Which is something you realize, Suki. So let me ask you this question, since you are an acclaimed businessman, and you kind of, in the eyes of many people, you have made it, and you had made it, and things changed for you. So what is it? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and what was it that gave you your shift that you want to start to share this with other people?
Well, firstly, thank you very much, Geeta, for having me on Facebook Live, and hope everybody can hear me clearly. And also, it's been a personal, humble journey to be able to be speaking at the Yes Group in London as well. So personally, it's been a very nice. It's been very humbling, to say the least. So thank you very much for having me here. And the first section, I think, is it the question? Because I'm hearing a lot of discussion around on this, a totally different story, but obviously around basically being a humanitarian, sort of nice sort of person compared to having money as well, and we can probably have that discussion a bit later as well.
Yeah.
But were you asking me a question along the lines of did anything change, or was it about what happened in my life to maybe
Yeah,
refocus?
that gave you that shift to
Love
do
it.
the work that you're currently doing.
Got it. Okay. So apologies first, everybody. Put my earphones better. Okay, so if I can give you a little bit of a synopsis about my past, if I may, just to the audience in case you don't know
Yes.
me. I'm kind of like not really one of those. I'm not going to give you one of those sort of cheesy sort of rags to riches stories. I'm not going to say to yourself, "Oh, my life was really rubbish, and then it's become amazing." None of that's there. I'm afraid I can only tell you the truth from my own self. My journey in life has been amazing. I've had. I'm a father of four beautiful children. Obviously, my parents recently they still live with me. My mum's passed away sadly, but um, I'm the youngest of eight siblings. Just to give you some feedback, they are mostly older than myself, logically. um, but as it comes to business itself, I've probably been schooled in business since a very young age. We're seven generations in business as well, from 1700s.
Wow.
Thank you. And that's obviously the humility and the humbleness that comes from our parenting. My father is,
So you grew up in business, right? You grew up around
yes.
people who were thinking business, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So nothing ever changed. For example, there was never a can I do business type thinking in my head. It was like my mum was very, very sincerely close to myself, and she would always you could in essence you could say she was pre-framing me for my future self. But she had such a beautiful way of saying, this is all yours anyway. You're the one who's going to run this place, and obviously I've got my brother and my sisters as well. But that's not the point. The point is that it was an installation inside my brain that said to me, "You're going to be perfect in business. Just keep going." In that context, so it was one of those sort of thoughts that I had that she instilled in my brain. So I never really had the detachment with success financially. Does that make sense? It was just I
Yeah.
only learnt this, would you believe, later in life. I'd say probably towards the mid 20s when I started to realize that actually it isn't the same for everybody. Does that make sense? I mean, I
Yeah.
originally thought that, okay, look, everyone's got the opportunity. It's in front of them. If they don't try, they don't get it, that kind of thing. How wrong was I? The reality of life is no, it's not like that at all. Some of us do get a good opportunity, but then it does rely on the individual's capacity as well. So,
Yeah.
a journey, if I can share, I've always been schooled in within business, within property specifically, and also within retail. And my journey when it comes to integrating in the third realm of the inner psychometric or the psychology of oneself, or I could say the easier way to say this would be you know, the real code that's inside the person's head of how their brain functions and world sees.
Yeah. Sorry, one second.
I'll wait for Keith to come back, just in case everybody else is listening as well.
I'll be back, yeah? Okay. Sorry,
It's okay.
home phone.
It happens, I'm afraid. So with reference to the psychology and psychometrics, because I'm a true believer that if you don't know yourself, that is the real sticker brick that causes a detachment to success. As Seneca says, when a man, and I mean mankind, when a man does not know which harbour he is making for, no wind is the right wind. Now, in the subsequent quantity of that, the replacement or the opposite to that as well, should I say the answer, would be the moment, the second a man knows which harbour he is making for, any wind is the right wind. So that the latter bit obviously is a play on his words, but by myself. But the reality is that if you don't know who you are, if you don't know who your inner self is, you don't know what your needs are in life, what you're even good at, or how you see the world, how will you know success? Quote unquote, how would you know success if it's staring you in the face? Because success is nothing more, nothing less than achieving what you set out to do. And that's it. It's nothing to do with finances. It's not doing this. It's a matter of the ability of cognitively thinking about something, feeling something, and then actually delivering it to the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So my journey, if I may share, 7 generations, myself, I've been in business from a very young age. I was studying at the same time as actually working as well. So I started a business within my family business. I took over one of the companies, which was having a bit of what we call a downturn at that time, due to the fact that the business expanded. My father, my brother, sisters, etc., were all over the place, and they're all managing different areas of the business. And in specific, one of our original businesses for my father in 1967 was a houseware store, and that was having a little trouble trying to stay in what we classify as the black in accounting system, but basically in profit. So my mum sort of said to me, I was actually on the journey at age 16 to take my A-levels in accordance with becoming an architect, because I was always inspired by my father when he was amending architectural plans. And it just had a real profound effect on me. So I've always been that graphic designing type person. So I took an opportunity to study that in that vein, being an architect. But my mum, how beautifully said, she instilled into me for quite some time that, okay, you go and do that, but find a way. Don't forget, I'm a 16-year-old, so you find a way of how you can open and close and run this shop as well as study as well. And I went, yeah, that makes sense. Wow. Let's do it. So
that's I mean, that just having that kind of guidance at that age is just, you're a very lucky man to
Truly.
have a mother of parents who are able to do that. Wow.
Truly.
Okay.
They're naturally individuals who used to ignite, and I'm saying used to because my mum's passed away, but my father's still with us, God bless him.
Yeah.
They still ignite, my father still ignites in us, and the thoughts that we're bringing back of my mum, they still ignite us to this day. So thank you for that recognition. The reality was basically, I then decided, instead of going to the route of school and sixth form, which would have locked me into a morning and an afternoon sort of structure, 9 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I chose, because obviously my mum had challenged me in a nice way to go and find another way. So I decided that I was going to go to college, in the Peterborough Regional College to be specific. And that would have allowed me the freedom to be able to turn around and turn up at lessons, finish the lessons, and then go back to one of the businesses. Does that make sense? Very unique sort of environment.
Yeah.
So within a 15, 20-month period, I've spoken about this many a time, so I'm not going to go into that in a bit more depth, but what we did is we turned the business around. I turned the business around from being a negative equity, sort of negative turnover business, profitability-wise, to a plus business. So from there spawned another 2 or 3 businesses that came out of there, from whether it's wholesaling pots and pans, manufacturing pots and pans, supplying, tele top-up cards, mobile phones, and also car audio, which was one of another successful businesses in the public arena.
Wow. So it's actually just looking for the need and supplying the need, right?
Yeah, and the inner excitement as well. Yes, inner excitement as well. I hear a lot of a lot of public speaking where they say, find your passion, find your dream, and make it into a business. Just remember one thing: the passion and your dream, for example, and more importantly, your hobby or something of that nature. The moment you turn this into a business, it no longer becomes a hobby; it becomes a business. So passion is definitely needed. But my father taught me when I was very young. He said, "Son, don't go and run a business around your passion only. Become passionate about running a business." And it changes everything.
Wow.
So
Actually,
whatever
there's a
you're
question
doing,
for you.
please, please.
And this may be answering Monica's question. Monica is on the line. Monica, I'm not going to pronounce your surname in case I get it wrong, but she says, lovely to see you. Just curious, what was your father's best advice that you got from him?
I
What
can't
was the best
actually
advice
answer that.
from your father?
Yeah, thank you, Monica, for the question, but I can't really answer that truly because he's constantly delivering nuggets. I've been gifted with having parents that are very sharp and switched on, and what they do is they see you in your current state and then they assist openly. That is man of faith, so he understands his grounding, he understands what it's got about. So he's always very much connected to my religious background as a Sikh, and I'm also a baptized Sikh as well. So these are very cool things. But in specific, my father, I use if you're going to come in next Wednesday, you'll probably see a slide with my father on there as well, and it is very clear which he has influenced my business understanding quite considerably, but equally so has my mum. So there's that one where I've just said yourself, obviously don't get passionate about, don't turn your passion into a business, become passionate about running a business, about being successful in business, if that's what your focus is. So look for things. And one of the key things that he still constantly tells me and told me when I was young, he said, son, look for what you want. In other words, you will find it. If you're looking for reasons not to start a business or not to become success at something, basically filling your life up with reasons to find out why I cannot move forward, what my blockages are. Does that make sense? And if you recite those blockages every day and try to work on removing those blockages every single day, then what ultimately happens is you just bring blockages into your life, and that's where your focus is. So you don't actually move on. In the Sikh faith as well, and also both my parents and my mum used to constantly tell me that, son, be aware of what's going right or wrong and just get on with it. So, put it behind you and move on, keep moving forward. And what happens is the psychology repairs itself.
You're saying lots of great nuggets. Yeah.
Yeah, it's constant, honestly. I could say another one for my mum, actually, is I'm very, very proud to share these sort of one-liners, etc., and quotes. Along the lines of very, very simply saying, if you start anything, make sure you start it with a positive heart. Otherwise, don't start it. Simple. And if you're not going to start it with a positive attitude in the first place, guarantee it's not going to work out for you. And one of the other co-speakers that I'm sharing the stage with is Marilyn, who's worked with me quite considerably, and we work together as well. And she laughs when we used to sit down together many years ago, 5-6 years ago. And she's a sister of mine as well. So, and she would constantly say things like, Sukhi, you need to create a book. And the book is of, what my dad used to say, kind of thing. So I hope that's answered some of your questions.
Yeah. I mean, definitely Marilyn, another amazing lady. So my question to you, it's amazing that you've had so much love and support with your environment, right? Your family, and I'm sure your siblings as well. What brought you to here and now with what you're teaching, and why are you teaching it? Because you have a very special message to give to people.
Yeah.
And it's special as well because you already come from success, right? And it's not the rags to riches, which is great, because you know what? Not everyone is rags to riches, right? It's about continuing the success. So what changed for you? And, why do you teach? You're teaching another message, a new message, maybe. What was it for you?
What a lovely question. I would say it's twofold. So my journey to try to share my current knowledge, or the knowledge of our family and our 7 generations, and maybe my own generational knowledge as well, with the world, was kind of a stimulus around 2006. What happened is I had basically a medical condition which is hepatitis A, and I contracted it through raw fish, which basically took me to being very close onto, I think, the genuine consensus was before I was actually no longer going to be here on this earth type thing. Now, logically, with all respect, I don't use that
Wow.
as a negative. I use it as a very positive, because it propels me to say that actually my time wasn't then, and thus I'm still here. So I would say what really was the stimulus for me to trying to change, and in a humble way, because I'm learning and sharing as well, because I believe I come from the background
Yeah.
of Sikh faith, and the Sikh faith, if you translate it, is Sikh meaning to learn. And the moment I believe a person stops learning or becomes
Yeah.
egotistical in their journey, they actually stop living. So it's very simple. So
Yeah.
life just becomes a downward spiral when it comes to energy and self belief. Okay, so
Yeah.
what changed was I had a near-death experience, which really created a catalyst in my brain, making me realize, or opening up my eyes to a different level. Because no matter what, basically opened my eyes to a realization that every single human being that I work with and speak to, and I meet on this planet, and is born, and I haven't met, has a personal experience. And I came to an inner realization that life, something had to change within myself, because at the end of the day, I think, as I said before, I believe every single human being is here on this planet for a reason. So what I wanted to ensure, and can you hear?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I, what I wanted to make sure I had got myself into a position was actually ensuring that I could recalibrate my life and realize what I was actually wanting to do in this world, and how I could try and help other people. I always have been, from a child, a type of individual who likes to help other people. Even when my fast cars, Astons, whatever it is, I used to get people asking me about, what's the car like? I said, well, I'll just throw them the keys and say, take the car and drive it and find out what's going on, because isn't that what it's made for? And it's a material product, but it gives me great joy. I never really had things for material showing off purpose and say, here, look at me, I've got an Aston, or here, look at me, I've got a Porsche, etc. It was always for self-realization and actually achievement. So in context of that, the question that arose in my brain is, if I can share something that if anybody's from Peterborough, they'll recognise my name, a name of a person I'm going to mention. His name is Reverend Patent, and what he used to do basically is connected to the Peterborough Cathedral, which this year is going to be 901 years old. So it's an awesome thing.
Wow.
He's passed away, God bless him now, but he was a very close friend to my father, and he once sat me down and said, "Son, that there's many different types of people." And if I can just share this little nugget there, because it really inspired me considerably. He said, once, because there's one man, there's a man who is born, and he lives his life, and he or she, if you understand, I'm just going to use the fabrication of the word, just he, to make it easier. He lives his life, and has a fruitful life to themselves, and dies. That's straightforward. It's an absolute normal life. He goes, but there's another type of person who is born, and what they do is, after being born, they have this inner feeling, and that there's something that they should be doing in this world, or there's some greater purpose to just being alive. Sadly, they don't ever decide to engage this or look for it. So what happens is that they live their life, and they pass on as well. There's a third type of person, and the third type of person is somebody who's born, who has that feeling and looks for it, but sadly doesn't find the gift that's been installed in with God, universe, whichever you think about. So I think it's the same collective universe and collective consciousness. So they spend their life trying to look for it, but don't find it, and they have a fruitful life, and they pass on as well. Yeah, there's a fourth type of person, and the fourth type of person is somebody who is born, finds something within themselves, actually finds it, looks for it and finds it, but forgets to share it, and they pass on. And there's a fifth type of person who is born. They hit the feeling, they look for it, they find it, and they're so gifted that they start to use this gift that they had in their life and better their own life as well. and possibly some people around themselves, and they pass on. They have a fruitful life and they pass on. And he said, then there's a sixth or seventh type of person who is born. They have the feeling. They find. They look, and they find. They open the box. They use it for themselves, and then they get the real in this world. What we also call in this modern world a legacy. Can you hear me again? Can you hear me?
Sukhi, I think we just missed the end of that story, the punchline.
Yes. Okay, so, and the final type of person would be somebody who is born, somebody who gets the feeling within themselves that they've got something to deliver to this world. Then, after getting the feeling, they look for it. After looking for it, they find it. After finding it, they open it and use it for themselves. But then they realize the real gift is to take this, the real purpose is to take this gift and share it with the outer world. And they don't just better their own world, they don't their own life, they're people they love, but also people they possibly don't know. And this is one of the key things that came to kind of my fruition circa around 2006, really 2007. And when I came back after being unwell, I decided that something had to change in a different way, where I wanted to create change in the worlds of others. So since then, it's been 13 years, and I'm still here, and I'm still sharing with other people. So that's been my catalyst, should I say. And one of my inner missions is actually to create ignition within an individual, so that they know themselves and they ignite their thinking and their learning, and they're prospering within themselves. Because life's not about creating needing individuals, it's about creating no needers, it's about creating leaders. And leaders come from self. From self. I hope that answers part of the question. Sorry if I've yabbled on.
And no, you haven't. And I guess your talk on Wednesday at the Yes Group London is really about showing people the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fives, that to ignite that light in them, so that they can become passionate about the work that they're doing, and then go out and share it with everyone. Okay, great. I have a question here. Please. Actually. You may be able to answer it here, you may not be. It might be a long answer. It's from Antonio. So Antonio, thanks for the question. So Antonio says, hi Sukhi, thanks for sharing. My question is, whenever I start a business, it starts with so much ambition and motivation, but it always seems to come face to face with a brick wall. What's the best perspective for driving through the blockages?
Wow. Okay. So, hi, Antonio. Thank you very much for such a great question. I think by asking that question, you're probably going to help a lot of people, if I can help and assist in some ways. Well, the first thing is that I did mention earlier with inner psychometrics. I'm not going to touch this on Wednesday. On Wednesday, I'm going to talk about procrastination and getting rid of the procrastination. But I did delve in just a moment ago, Antonio, that at some stages in our life, we create our own blockages. And what we do is we then focus on those blockages instead of actually focusing on just moving forward. Does that make sense? Modern psychology has a bit of a challenge. And the challenge is that we think that the unconscious mind can't repair itself, but it can. It's just a thought at the end of the day. A blockage is just a thought. And the more energy you give that thought, the more time it will stay. Does that make sense? A thought is going through the brain and it wants to just move on, and then it wants to just keep moving on. Does that make sense? It comes into your brain, it disappears. But if you hold it for a bit of time, it's trying to get away, and what you do is you bring it back, and then it goes away and you bring it back again. So that's when you have what we classify as an expanded period of sorrow. So life's going to continue. The reality is those blockages, if much the same as if you cut your finger. If I cut my finger, I'm principally guaranteed that I would bleed somewhere along the line. Please don't make it squirmish, but you'd bleed. But instantly what happens is that the body starts to repair itself immediately. Immediately it looks at it and says, oh, hang on a second. It starts to send blood cells there and starts to seal it up and coagulate. And then it creates a scab very quickly and seals it. So the answer to the question is that if our body can fix itself, why not our brain? If we focus on the blockages, then that's what we will see in our life. Does that make sense, Antonio? So my question to yourself is that if you start with the volition and ambition, I would and then it sort of starts to tail off a little bit, and you start focusing on the blockages. I think it needs a bit of work, but habitually what happens is if you start to look for kind of new things to do within the business and expand it, what we've got to realize is when we get to a peak to a certain level, sometimes we may hit, like we're about to start the business, then the business starts. So we've got our first sale. And then the first sale, then we try to multiply that to maybe 5 sales, and then multiply it on to maybe 1,000 sales. At each stage, we require new motivation. This is something that's not shared very often, but I'm afraid with us healed sort of entrepreneurs who do it regularly, and I don't really use the word entrepreneur quite a lot. I use the word business person because entrepreneurship's a bit overused, I think. In reality, by the time you've started your business, when you get to the top of starting the business, when you've actually taken that first sale, your whole mission vision needs to change. And then you start to focus with a new goal, Antonia, to get to your next 5. And then when you get to your 5, you then get to your 10 and 10 plus. So the reality of life would be is for you to re-establish your goals and not sit on the first aim and goal. Because sometimes we decide to buy a vehicle, and I'm just using this as a hypothetical example. We buy a vehicle to become a taxi driver. And then what happens is we go, we pick people up and we drop them off, pick people and drop them off. Somewhere along the line, somebody says to you, can you drop me off to the airport? And you think, okay, yeah, of course I can. And they say, can you just give me a fixed price? So you give them a fixed price and you go and drop off at the airport. Then they give you a call again and say, can you do it again? So doing airport runs as a chauffeur wasn't the original business, was it? The original business was to run as a taxi driver. And what happens is that after a period of time, you start to realize that you get more money in the longer jobs, plus the whole focus for your business goes that way. And that's okay. What you need to do is you need to adapt and evolve. I honestly say that you have to be your own disruptor. You have to disrupt your business before somebody else disrupts it for you. So if somebody out there is growing a taxi company and you're in the taxi business, somebody says, can you take me to the airport run? Then become an airport run person as well, specialist in that environment, and you'll earn different money and you'll be cutting another niche. So don't sit on the original business idea, business model, and business plan. As it evolves, you can't predict it. So as it evolves, grow, change, adapt, and move with it. So make it dynamic. There is something just below this, if I can share, Geeta, if I've got a bit more space, if it's okay.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah,
Apologies
I'm at the edge of my seat.
Oh, my apologies.
I've got so many questions as well, but I'm not going to
No,
ask them
you can do, but I'll be a bit shorter in future. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically the other thing that I want to share is that everything that you do in your life starts with you. If you don't know yourself, there is no answer to any of the solutions or anything that I'm going to offer to yourself. You do it for a bit of time and then you'll find yourself drifting again. The reality is you're not drifting. You're not feeding your actual natural self, your inner psychometric. And this is scientific, so it can be done very easily. So you can, if I can share, you can go online and go into the inspireduniversity.com and just read up about psychometrics by all means. But my question here to yourself is that when you learn yourself, there's a dominant character, an influence character, then there's a stability character, and obviously everyone knows DISC, so it's a compliant character. My sounds would be that if you're kind of starting something and getting a bit bored and maybe a bit down and focusing on the blockages, that you have what we classify as an inspiring character or an inspirer character, which means that you focus a lot on starting up as opposed to actually running and continuing. Yeah. So here's a little trick for you. If it's okay for you, Antonia, basically, and anybody else who's listening who feels themselves in the same space, just literally plot out your business trajectory as an idea and ensure at certain key points when you've done certain things, you treat it like a new business again. So you may get to 5 sales and say, right, now my business is completely different. Now I'm going for the 100 sales, and you have to change the business. When you stick with the original vision and idea, that's when it stunts you, and that's when you start putting blockages in your way. I hope that helps a little bit. But on Wednesday...
No, that's a great idea. You know what? I want to say to anyone who's listening, I'm humbled by how humble you are, Sukhi, because I think what you're sharing are just key, simple things from the heart. It's not a get rich quick. It's not a, it's about being and doing sensible things, and I really admire that in people. There are loads and loads of questions. I'm not going to ask you any because I'm going to see you next Wednesday, and I'm going to ask you those questions when I see you. Anybody online
Hi to Ian there, by the way. I've just seen Ian all the way from Thailand. So there we are, Ian, my brother. We ran Living Big together, and it was a very important time in our lives. I think both of us. Yeah, it was very nice.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Another beautiful guy, Ian Young, saying hi to you. Yeah, so those of you, Sukhi's going to be, if you've got any questions, come and see us next Wednesday live at Yes Group London. We are going to be at the Holiday in Bloomsbury. Sukhi's going to be one of our speakers there. The other speaker is that amazing, beautiful lady, Marilyn Devonish, who's going to be talking a little bit about energy, and not a little bit, she's going to be talking a lot about energy and the Huna, and its amazing capabilities of shifting unconscious energy or unconscious blocks. Antonio, if that's something that happens with you, I know sometimes I have unconscious blocks, and it's a beautiful tool to use if you train in it, or to have someone work with you. But Sukhi and Marilyn Devonish are going to be our speakers next month. It's next week.
Next week, Wednesday evening, the 27th at 6 p.m. Let me do that for you.
Yes, please, go ahead. Take it away.
Actually, do you know what is truth? I'm just going to share something. Because on Wednesday, I'm going to share the DFT process, which is the daily focused time process. This is about, it's the 7 clear steps of how to bring your brain back into conscious focusness as well. And again, hi to Ian, who noticed I'm wearing black once again. So that's my trademark color. What happens is basically you do certain key things. I mean, you know, when you get the blockages, that's usually when you've got what's classified as a conscious block, if you can just see that. And then the idea of the game is to be able to walk past the block. Does that make sense? So you're behind it, in front of it, as opposed to behind it. You don't actually have to take the blocks out. This is the modern myth. You know, we've created challenges for ourselves to get rid of these blocks. The reality is the blocks are just a thought. Leave them. They'll disappear. They'll be useless. It's like saying, I'm not going to listen to you, and you put your hand up so like this, and then all of a sudden you kind of move yourself around and go around this way and say, oh, I see that, you know, I can see that. But then you realize, what's the hand up here for in the first place? And you're beyond it, beyond the block. Does that make sense? So just give yourself that chance of moving forward in life, and don't hold back against these things. Basically, I'm going to give you a 7-step process which allows your conscious brain and your unconscious heart center to be able to get past any block, any position, anywhere in your life, whatever it is, whether it's relationships, whether it's business, whether it's financial, whether it's moving into a new house, trying to select that, trying to, just get yourself further in business, full stop, and you're hitting a glass ceiling. So the 7 steps will be given to you very, very openly, and I'll also stay for as long as necessary if anybody wants any questions there. But the aim of the game is to be there in the room. Come and definitely be with us on Wednesday, the 27th at 6 p.m. Is that correct? Right?
So 6:30 will be registration. We start at 7. Obviously, Sukhi, you're going to be our first speaker. It's going to be an amazing evening. I'm going to put a link on this Facebook Live to the booking page, so you can learn more about it and obviously book your tickets. So I've learned a lot of new things about you as well, Sukhi, in this Facebook Live. So I'm sure I'm going to learn more next Wednesday. I just want to say thank you for your time this Saturday afternoon.
My pleasure.
I'm looking forward to seeing you next week, and we'll take it from there.
My pleasure.
So thank you everyone else who was watching. Any final words, Sukhi?
Do you know, the honest truth is there's a very close friend of mine, or a client of mine, whose name is Martin Bellinger. Martin R. Bellinger has recently passed away just in January.
I heard.
Yeah. So just as a good fortune and in memory of a good man with a good soul and a good heart, I would like to say onwards and upwards, as he was my kind of like a #1 person who used to always use that philosophy that I share with people there. You're always moving onwards, but upwards as well. It's not just holding back on yourself. So God bless you wherever you are. And I'll see you all next week, Wednesday. Thank you, Keita.
Thank you very much. Take
care.
Guys. Bye. Bye-bye.